What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I would like to welcome you all to another edition of Wayne's Perspective, where we operate in discipline, decency, integrity, and respect. And I'm coming through with another video just for you. Before I get started, I hope everyone is doing okay out there, taking every day one day at a time, living life the best way you know how. As for me, y'all know how I do. I'm also doing okay, can't complain too much, taking every day one day at a time and living life the best way I know how on my end as well. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and get started with today's video, which should be a fun one if you're a wrestling fan. And as you can see by the title, this is going to be a top 10 favorite match of all time session. And I'm going to be doing a few more of these over the next upcoming weeks to let you all know what my top 10 favorite matches of all time are. Today's session is going to talk about the Steve Austin versus Dude Love match from Over the Edge 1998 in your house, which took place on May 31st, 1998 at the Wisconsin Center Arena in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I saw this one on pay-per-view the night that it aired, and I recall being pretty excited about it. And of course, a couple of years later, I believe in 2000, I bought the home video from my local FYE at South Park Mall. And those listening to this, if you're from Petersburg, Virginia, you know South Park Mall and how much of a spot that used to be back in the day. Not so much today, but that's a whole nother story. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the video. I want to begin things by talking about the opening video package. As a longtime wrestling fan, I love video packages. Always have, always will. Not just because of the visual aspect of the footage, but just how it's able to tell a story. And there's no doubt that the leader has always been the WWF / WWE when it comes to video packages. Way back in the day, their video packages, you could tell that they was experimenting a little bit by the way they showed the footage and all that. But as the years went by, they got better and better. It's not just the visual aspect with the footage, but anytime you can include voiceovers, music, all it does is just add to it. And plus, it tells the story about the match that you're going to see, and it gets you hyped. This video package going into the Austin Dude Love match, it was great stuff. And I would title this Overcoming the Odds, because that's the whole story here, wondering whether Steve Austin would be able to overcome the odds that's going to be stacked against him going into this title match against Dude Love. Continuing on, we go back to April of 1998, specifically the Unforgiven 1998 pay-per-view, which I saw live when it aired, and towards the end of the Austin Dude Love main event, which was also a very good match, with Vince McMahon on the outside of the ring trying to pick Dude Love up and put him back in the ring. Austin came outside and just straight up blasted Vince in the head with a chair, and even looking at it through 2025 lens, I'm still wondering whether it was intentional or not. The next night on Raw, the April 27th, 1998, Vince McMahon was doing an interviewed, and he basically said he was being asked would he fire Stone Cold Steve Austin, and his reply was not yet. This becomes very important, but only months later. And just jumping ahead a little bit, we go to October 1998, and going into the Judgment Day 1998 pay-per-view, there was a main event to crown a undisputed WWF champion. This was going to be Undertaker versus Kane. Vince McMahon made Steve Austin the special guest referee, with the stipulation being if Austin didn't count the fall and award either the Undertaker or Kane the WWF title, Vince McMahon will fire him on the spot. And I remember talking to my mom about this, because at this point, I was in the 9th grade. I was a freshman in high school. And anytime Austin was doing something on Monday Night Raw, I would always run into the living room and turn the TV so that my mama could see what was going on USA, even while she was in the midst of watching Monday Night Football. I still remember it. It always brings back memories. But even then, I was talking to my mom about it at the age of 14. And my mom was like, and this is a direct quote because I remember this. She said they wouldn't fire him because if they did, the ratings would go down. My mom had long checked out of wrestling, and I talked about it on another one of my videos on the channel. The reason why she stopped watching wrestling as far back as the late 80s was because of the Dusty finish. She was heavily into the NWA at the time. She liked Ric Flair. She liked the Road Warriors. She liked Dusty Rhodes. But what took her out of it was the Dusty finish. So you know that those finishes, if that could take my mom out of wrestling and keep her out of wrestling outside of what she may have seen when I was looking at it, you know how impactful those Dusty finishes were. Just thought I'd throw that in there for everyone. Continuing on with this video package, and like I said, it's a great package because it tells the story from Unforgiven 1998 all the way up until match time. So then we proceed on. Dude Love is named the #1 contender, which necessitated the rematch for Over the Edge. Vince McMahon stacked the deck against Steve Austin by naming himself as the special guest referee, Jerry Briscoe as the guest timekeeper, and Pat Patterson as the guest ring announcer. And of course, Vince McMahon. Y'all remember them segments on Raw when he was gloating about assaulting Stone Cold Steve Austin? He said, "I assaulted Stone Cold Steve Austin and got away with it. I thank you very much." Next thing you know, Stone Cold, he comes out, "You are the world's dumbest son of a bitch." Funny stuff, y'all, and memorable stuff too. So then he gets in, he says, "I want you, the cops, to do your job and arrest that piece of trash right now." Take his ass to jail. So we get to a funny segment backstage with Vince McMahon in handcuffs, and they're trying to get an apology out of Vince. Vince McMahon won't budge. So Austin was like, "Okay, the hell with it." So then they do it again, and Vince apologizes. You know he don't mean it. He apologizes, and in a funny moment, he says, "I accept his apology. He's a good kid," and pats Vince on the head. That was so funny then, and it's so funny now. Later in that episode of Raw, Vince McMahon comes out, "How dare you have me arrested in public like a common criminal?" Vince clearly didn't mean that apology. He then goes on to say that he accepts the condition of somebody being at ringside to make sure he calls the match down the middle. And this is a quote, "Because there isn't one WWF superstar on the roster that can intimidate me. Not one. Only to be chokeslammed by The Undertaker later in the show." And remember when Austin tied Vince in the ropes, about to clock him in the head with a chair, only for Austin to clock Dude Love in the face with a chair when he ran in the ring? That was a hell of a chair shot, y'all. And those types of chair shots, we're simply not going to see in wrestling anymore, and rightly so. This video package ultimately showed how awesome the overall storyline was, especially with the progression of the Austin McMahon feud, and just how great Raw was at this point in the Monday Night War. Definitely. And getting to the pre-match interview, Vince made sure to note that the match would end by his hand only. Keep that in mind. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and get my screen share because I'm going to do a little bit of interesting play-by-play here today. I mentioned before that I'm a longtime wrestling fan, and there's an author by the name of Scott Keith. I'm not sure if anybody who's listening to this know who Scott Keith is, but he runs the Scott's Blog of Doom webpage. I've been supporting him since 2001. I make sure to tell him that anytime I send him an email with a question for the blog or whatever the case may be. And speaking of emails, I recently sent him one asking if I could use his reviews to do play-by-play on some of the episodes that I plan on doing. And he pretty much said, "Sure, go right ahead." And I appreciated that. And like I said, I wanted to ask him before I went ahead and did it on my own. Granted, I would have included the link in the description box, but I still wanted to ask him and get the okay. And that's where we come to today. Overall, I'm not what you would say skilled at doing play-by-play. So rather than try to do something I'm not quote unquote skilled at, why not use the product of somebody that I've been supporting for decades now to do that play-by-play, if you get what I'm saying. And what you see on my screen is Scott Keith's review of this WWF title match from Over the Edge 1998. And again, shout out to Scott Keith for letting me use his review as well as future reviews to do my own videos. Really appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and get into this one right here. As noted, it's the WWF title match. Steve Austin versus Dude Love, the match that established the Steve Austin main event style forever and gave Vince Russo his idea to recycle 800 times after this. And as longtime fans would know, Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara were the two head writers in the WWF at this point, with Vince McMahon having the final say on what you saw on TV. The Fink, rest in peace to him, is forced to robotically introduce guest ring announcer Pat Patterson in glowing terms while reading from cue cards. Funny shit. It was funny. Pat is apparently a Canadian legend on the level of Anne Murray. No argument there. Pat then introduces fellow stooge and guest timekeeper Gerald Briscoe, including a plug for the body shop, of course. And rest in peace, Pat Patterson as well. The introduction of guest referee is so incredibly over the top that you know Vince had to write it himself. And you know it's a special occasion because Mick has his teeth in. Patterson refuses to introduce a bum like Austin, but everyone knows who he is, and that's confirmed when Austin came out. He got a big pop, and this was normal for him in 98 because he was so over as the WWF champion. Every time you saw him on TV, he always got big pops, and this show was no different. Undertaker then delays the opening bell by making a surprise appearance as the guest enforcer to keep Vince in line. Undertaker got a big pop when he came out, so it comes down to all of this. Like I said, the storyline was awesome. The TV leading up to this show was awesome. So naturally, the people are going to be into it when showtime came. Let's continue on. Vince starts bullying Austin right off the opening lockup. Dude's shoulder block gets a really fast 2 count, and Undertaker shoots Vince a dirty look. The counts slow down after that. Crowd is just insane for Austin. I agree. Dude gets a knee for 1 and grabs a headlock, and they work off that for a bit. Dude's teeth gets knocked out, so Austin improvises a spot where he stomps on them. One awesome touch. Well, now Mick's pissed and he pounds on Austin in the corner, but walks into a Thesz press and gets dumped. They brawl, and Austin hits the stairs. Vince tells them that there's no count out, which is news to JR, so we go back in. This was a funny bit as well because when they announced the no count out, JR was going off. Since when? Since when? That's not right. Funny stuff, man. And it just adds to the match as we go on. Dude gets a leg sweep for 2 and chokes away. Dude drops an elbow and rams a knee into the gut for 2. Austin gets a neck breaker and 3 clotheslines and stumps a mud hole. Dude gets the mandible claw early on, but Austin hangs him in the ropes. Out we go, and Patterson, quote unquote, reminds us that it's no DQ. This also is news to JR, and he gets a bit bent out of shape over it. He went off again. Since when? Since when? That's not right. Great stuff here, man. Continuing on, Dude takes advantage of this sudden change of steps by choking out Austin with a TV cable, but hits a table and gets pounded. Austin sends Dude Love into the front row with a sick clothesline over the railing and back to ringside for more ass whooping. That was a sick clothesline, and the crowd popped huge for it too. Back in, Austin crouches himself and Dude baseball slides him out again. Neck breaker on the floor, and now Patterson, quote unquote, reminds us that his falls count anywhere. JR is shocked and appalled and still going off about it too, the same way that I mentioned earlier. Dude gets a backslide for 2 in the aisle. Austin rips his head off with the lariat, and they fight to the cars use the scenery, where Dude backdrops Austin onto a car and gets 2. Austin hotshots Dude onto a car for 2. They head onto the roof, but Dude blocks a stunner and sends Austin crashing to the floor in a crazy bump. Austin blades on the way down. Dude then sunsets off the top of the car for 2. Dude grabs an exhaust pipe, but Austin isn't ready to take the shot, so they scrap it. Austin fights back, but a power driver is reversed for 2. Dude suplexes him and heads up to the roof of a car, but misses an elbow. Austin gets 2 from that. They head back to ringside and into the ring, where Pat trips Austin to put Dude back on offense. He exposes a turnbuckle and rams Austin into it, then works the cut. Dude hits the chin lock and Austin fights free, but goes back into the turnbuckle again. Dude grabs a chair in desperation and uses that for a double arm DDT that gets 2, but charges and gets it back in the face. Now Austin is pissed. Chair shot kills Foley dead, but Vince won't count. And JR was going off about that too. Count him, count him, count him, damn it. You count him. Dude recovers and charges with the chair again, but now Vince gets it upside the head and goes night-night. Kick, wham, stunner, no ref. Another ref runs in the count, but Pat Patterson gets rid of him at 2, and I think that was Mike Chioda, who's still in WWE today, I might add. Mick reverses to a mandible claw, and Pat decides to exercise his refereeing powers to count 2, but Undertaker exercises his right to fuck shit up old school and choke slams him through a table. Big pop for that. Now that's an effective use of Undertaker. Briscoe tries the same refereeing strategy and gets no love from the dead man either. Choke slam through that table. Big pop for that too. Kick, wham, stunner, and Austin uses Vince's own hand to count the pin and blow the damn roof off the building. Now that's sports entertainment. That was a great main event. Scott Keith gave it 4.75 stars. I give it 5 stars. And in my opinion, in a year without the Undertaker Mankind Hell in a Cell match at King of the Ring 1998, this would have been my pick for match of the year. It was a great match, and Vince said in that pre-match interview that the match would end by his hand only, and that's exactly what happened. I also want to touch on a few other things before I close the video. Again, the storyline going into the match was great. Austin was great. Mick Foley was great. Vince McMahon, Pat Patterson, and Gerald Briscoe, they did their thing with their roles. And as far as I'm concerned, this match was brilliantly called as well. Jim Ross, he and Jerry the King Lawler, they did an exceptional job, just like they did on a weekly basis at this point on Raw. They got the story across. They put over how good Austin was. They put over how tough Mick Foley was as Dude Love. What more can you expect from a match like this? It was great across the board. It's my number 9 favorite match of all time. 5 stars in my opinion. It still holds up today. And in a world without that King of the Ring 1998 Hell in a Cell match with Undertaker and Mankind, this would be my match of the year in 1998. And on that note, we're done with this top 10 favorite match of all time session. Stay tuned to the next one. And of course, if you like what you heard and you're ready to become part of Team Discipline, go ahead and hit that like button and drop some comments if you're feeling the content. Definitely let me know your thoughts on this match. And last but not least, hit that subscribe button along with the bell so you're notified when I drop new videos. And until next time, my people, take care of yourselves. And remember, Stone Cold Steve Austin is the toughest son of a bitch I ever saw to overcome this. Take care, y'all. Until the next session.